Hello everybody. Hopefully you've watched the intro video to Linear Perspective. This is the first in the series, and I am going to explain how perspective functions as a storytelling element. Now, there are a lot of approaches to linear perspective, and I think the most common one in terms of teaching is the teacher will show how to make a grid, and then a lot of times the students or whoever is learning it kind of has a tendency to look at the grid as a series of rules to follow in order for things to look right. I don't like this approach because I think that it has the potential to make things look a little sterile. It's also rigid and inflexible. And while that might be acceptable in art forms outside of storytelling, when we're visually telling stories, we need to compose things and stage things so that the compositions look good. And we cannot do that in a manageable way if we have an inflexible approach. And we want our images to look alive and crazy and interesting, which is why I chose this as a starter image. This is a double-page spread for my upcoming book, Fail Machine. So what I am going to do in this slideshow is talk about the first part of putting together a composition with linear perspective and how to place the figures and all of that. Alright, so let me begin. This image is one that I did. I used all kinds of crazy grids. I'm breaking all kinds of rules, and I did it in a way that was really exciting to me, and I think it really paid off. So I want to emphasize that linear perspective is not rules to follow so that things look right. It's a series of strategies we can utilize in different situations to achieve things. All right, let's move forward. So when we're telling a story visually, and I'm actually going to include this slideshow, we need to compose shots, and we want to do it in a dramatically impactful way, and we want to compose them sort of around the figures. And so what we need to think about is the eye level of the camera, so to speak. It's not really a camera, but the eye level is something we need to consider, and that's actually the first thing that we kind of consider. So here is where I chose to put the eye level. I like to place it belower than the people's heads a lot of times, just to create some melodrama. It has a tendency to do that. These figures are two different heights, so if they're not facing each other at the same eye level, you kind of want to take an average between this guy's eyes and this guy's eyes and put it somewhere in the middle. And then here, I wanted to put the viewer in the seat of the kind of character that's at a disadvantage here. And that would be Josiah on the floor. His name is Josiah, this character here. Sorry. So we put him in the foreground in sort of a weakened position. And then the horizon line is right at his eye level. Again, keeping it a little bit below Josiah's eye level. Here, again, is a more extreme kind of situation. I wanted these men to look, the three men standing, I wanted them to look powerful and intimidating in this shot. And so I chose to put the horizon line really low. Not at Josiah's eye level. He is sort of we want to be in his position, but he's already in the foreground, so we're already kind of in his shoes. So I put the horizon line low, and just to be a little off-putting, I tilted it. That's sort of, I wouldn't suggest doing that until we have a little bit more experience. People tend to, it can be disorienting. So let's move forward. So this is Alberto Breccia's Paramus. I specifically chose these images because there is no background. And what I want to emphasize here is that he did not use linear perspective to draw the background, but he did use a horizon line to place the figures in a way that makes spatial sense and in a way that fosters drama. So that is sort of how we want to think. Here we put the horizon line a little low. I marked it. And these are just my estimations based on my experience, where it looks like it is to me. It might be a little higher, but this is where it looks like he placed the figures around. Here, the horizon line is right through. It intersects the characters at all the right place. It's just right in the eyes, around there. So that's about where the horizon line is. And because it's a little higher, you can see a bit of the background. It creates, it's pretty atmospheric. So here we have these two characters standing and speaking to a bunch of seated characters. And so I guess the people doing the talking needed to look serious and kind of tough. And so they are higher than the other characters. And the horizon line is about at their eye level. If you see, they're kind of smiling in a sort of obsequious kind of a way. So they're supposed. What I suspect is that they're supposed to look kind of impotent and aloof. And so, if we want them to look impotent and aloof, and these guys to look powerful, we would kind of put the horizon line at their level so that these men look a bit more tough and somber. Again, another shot. The horizon line is right below the large gentleman in the foreground. This makes him seem powerful and makes the other people seem kind of, weaker, I guess. That is how the horizon line is functioning there. He sort of wants to put the viewer in the position of the man talking. Again, we want him to look tough as he's talking to the aloof sort of man in the foreground. And so the horizon line is actually right through his eyes. This establishing shot is used to orient the reader or introduce them to a new environment. We use these establishing shots as sort of a logical thing to orient the reader. It's not to enhance drama. It's specifically for orientation. And these establishing shots have a high horizon line. We want to orient the reader because if we don't, they are in a position where they have to interpret space, and we want to leave room in their head to process the emotionality of whatever story we're telling. And so we always need to throw one of these in. And oddly enough, they tend to take up the most time in terms of drawing, even though the people just kind of glaze over it. But it can be quite impressive. So there's a trick in the Rapid Viz book where you can find vanishing points and then find a horizon line in an image. This previous slide is the one down here. And if we find the horizon line is way up here for that establishing shot. It's way off of the page. This is sometimes we want it low on the top, but here I put it way out. So a high horizon line detaches the reader from the action. The trade-off is that it orients the reader spatially and creates a sense of atmosphere. So the establishing shot creates an atmosphere for this story, but detaches the reader from the characters. So we don't want a lot of action unless it's kind of unimportant to the story. And then you're kind of in a position, well, if it's unimportant, why go through the effort of drawing it? But if you're like me, and if you're like Geoff Darrow, the artist here, we love putting that stuff in. We just make sure, it's not the focus. So I love Geoff Darrow. He always has great atmospheres with his storytelling. This low horizon line brings the reader into the action and the experience of the characters, but the space is totally unclear. If you had to figure out the size relationships between the figures, it's kind of ambiguous. This is an image I did for my book. The horizon line is very low and pretty disorienting, but that's what we want for action. We're not there for clarity so much as drama. There's a portion in Making Comics that discusses clarity versus intensity, and it's worth reading. It's on 45. So the rules, I guess, the sort of theory here, I guess, is that establishing shots demand clarity, so they require a high horizon line. Dramatic shots demand intensity, so they typically require a lower horizon line. So that is what I wanted to convey through this lecture. And now I am going to go through how to place the figures. I'm actually going to do that in the next video. So I hope you got a lot out of this. Thank you.